Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, I'm Dr. Ron Swatzyna. I'm with the Houston Neuroscience Brain Center. Been here now about going on 3 years, I guess, when we opened this up. And back, like I was saying to Stephanie, we started this in, I think it was May or June of 2020, just after COVID got started. And it was one of these sporadic phone calls just came up. I thought, well, who can I talk to about putting something like this together? Because now we're stuck with Zoom and we're locked inside and we can't really do our presentations, but I like education. I like getting the information out. Knowledge is power, especially for these parents that are struggling with some of these children. And so who else better to go to than, the people I've been working with for years, Julie at the Hub and Coach over there, and then Pam Esser, which is just a part of everything around here. And then, of course, Elizabeth, and then pass it on to Stephanie, at Fusion. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us to get this information out, to help everybody see that we're out there trying to all work together. We got 6 million people almost in this city. We don't have to worry about being picky. We just share. There's enough to go around out there. And so, but here at the Houston Neuroscience Brain Center, we are offering again this summer our brain camp, which we do intensive 20 sessions of neurofeedback, double sessions a day for 2 weeks. And we can knock out 20 sessions real quickly. We do offer it at a discounted rate. And it's something we were offering it strictly for one population of children or adolescents trying to get ready to go to college doing peak performance work. But we just had so many people begging us to open it up to everybody because summer times are a great time to get a lot of training done. And we thought we will go ahead and take advantage. So thanks to Bridgette and thanks to so many of the other, Alexandra and so many other assistants that are coming on board, we're going to have a great summer with that. So any questions about that, just reach out. Miss Bridgette, sometime in there, or I'll try to do it, put in our email address so they can get to it as well. With that being said, today's topic, we're going to be talking about social skills and how valuable they are. And I once said that you can take a person with an average IQ and you can outperform a genius IQ if you have superior social skills. On the other hand, you can have a genius IQ with no social skills, and there's a lot of homeless geniuses out there. So social skills is so important, and I think this is one of the areas that we really suffered. Our children, our adolescents have really taken a big hit. With technology coming on even prior to the pandemic, but now more so than ever with the isolation of the kids the first 2 years, basically. I'm hearing so many complaints about so many different situations. They just don't have the ability. They don't want to communicate with people face to face anymore. I've had assistants come in and hated even talk to somebody on the phone. So that's incredible. How are you going to interview for a job if you can't have a conversation? So this is something that I've been working on for many, many years. And so I asked Bridgette to step in here because I just like how her brain works. And she's come up with a great presentation. So with that, without any further ado, please, Bridgette, it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Did it share? Oh.
It isn't sharing yet. We just see you.
Okay.
Co-host, Bridgette, co-host.
Alrighty.
There it is. Perfect.
You got it. Let me go ahead and move this. And
It'll be at the bottom. You can make it.
yeah, it's up here for this one, I believe, or right there. Alrighty.
Perfect. Excellent.
We're going to be talking about social skills, and I'm going to make this small so we can all see here. Why do we need social skills? Well, this is a critical skill that we need to maintain a successful career and a positive interactions with others. It increases your understanding and feelings for others. And just like Dr. Ron said, you can't reap the benefits of your intelligence without some good social skills. I believe that developing these social skills at a young age also reduces stress in a daycare setting, which can lead to reduced social anxiety later in life. So developing social skills. This allows for individuals to better enjoy their peer relationships. And this is something that needs ongoing refinements. So this is not just something we want children to be practicing. This is something that adults can be practicing as well. Therefore, you want to learn and strengthen these and practice them over time. The benefits of social skills can be increased educational opportunities, better career outcomes, and stronger friendships. Again, I'm going to touch on what Dr. Ron said. I like to keep in mind that we were just in quarantine for about 2 years, and technology has also been increasing in the younger population, more time spent on technology. This has put people in isolation more often, and we're not around people as much as we used to be. So when we do go out, it's a little more stimulating than initially. And developing the proper coping skills and exposing these individuals that, you know, it may be a little harder for them to be going out in public again, or maybe, you know, they used to have some fear of going out in public and now they just won't go out at all. Getting them to be exposed to social interactions more frequently can also help overcome that increased social anxiety. That's an example of exposure. Next, it's great to talk about asking questions. One important way to initiate a conversation with someone is by asking questions. And this is also a great way to find out about others and connect. Dr. Ron says that when he was younger, you know, he wanted to communicate better with women. So what did he do? But he got a job selling shoes, because what a good way to try and conversate with women. He would have to go up and try and sell them shoes. He put himself in a situation where he had to learn how to ask questions. Also, encouraging others to ask open-ended questions is very important. Something that can't be answered with a yes or no. Introversion and anxiety can occur when conversations lag or get complicated, leading to struggles in communication in the future. If you learn how to ask questions, this can help. Oh. Okay, the next thing is to follow their interests. So it's really important to figure out what this individual's interests are, and finding a group or a certain thing that they enjoy. This could be art, music, sports, anything. This is an excellent way for children to begin building their social skills in a group setting. And it also places a person in an environment with like-minded individuals. This can ease anxiety. Some things that I can think of are like Boy or Girl Scouts, religious groups or summer camps, environments with good team building exercises. Another thing I'd like to emphasize, especially for children, that parents should feel very comfortable putting their child in a social situation and allowing them to learn. One thing that's really important is practicing role playing. And I mean this by having conversations with others and practicing that conversation. So a lot of times we can get nervous going in for a job interview, for example. So something I used to do and my mother used to help me with is practicing and role playing before. She would pretend to be the interviewer and she would interview me. And at first it seemed silly, but then it really helped me in the long run. Having someone pretend like they're the individual that they were having a hard time getting along with might be important. And then suggesting ways for them to communicate more effectively when something difficult comes up. This can also give you an idea of how this person perceives this other individual. And don't forget to mention other aspects of communication, such as body language. Respecting personal space. So I think it's really important to teach children about respecting personal space, and not only children, but some adults as well. Creating household rules can be really effective that encourage others to respect your personal space, such as knocking on closed doors before you open them. Also establishing consequences or boundaries for people that are encroaching on your personal space, such as grabbing your hand or maybe standing too close to you. Something that you could implement is as an example for your child is maybe they should try and stand arm's length away from people when they're talking to others. One thing I would like to emphasize is it's really important not to publicly shame individuals for not engaging in behaviors that do not respect others' personal space, because they might be overstimulated in that environment. Going home and then talking to them about that situation later, and maybe things they can fix in the future is a better way to go about it. This will only, shame is only going to lead to a damaged self-esteem and increased social anxiety, which we don't want. Learning social skills also teaches empathy. This allows individuals to talk about situations and scenarios of us that are similar, and you want to make sure to ask how they may feel when each scenario happens. One way to do this is to encourage people to actively listen, and then afterwards, you ask them to focus on what others are saying, and then reflect about what the speaker has said afterwards. Sharing is also a really important part of developing social skills. This helps show our willingness to share, and it helps also boost the individual's self-esteem. This increases pro-social interactions by encouraging compromise and fairness, which are two things that are very important in a work environment. So this can also be seen in school children, especially because they share on a more physical level, like toys and stuff. But encouraging sharing at such a young age helps individuals learn how to keep friends, learn how to take turns and negotiate, along with gaining the ability to cope with disappointment. Because in order to share, you are willing to give up something and expect nothing in return. The polite thing to do is return, have a returning gift or favor. But the whole point of sharing is to give someone something without any expectation for something in return, which prepares you for disappointment. Cooperation. This is really important and necessary when getting along with others in a community. Activities where people are working together to achieve a common goal is a great way to increase cooperating social skills. It also emphasizes the importance of teamwork in a group setting. This is also very important for developing future romantic relationships as well. Last but not least, I'd like to go over some coping skills. So all of this is great. We can work on all of these different behavioral aspects at home, but what if our anxiety is just really high? Well, there are some things that can help when you get overstimulated in a social setting. One of those techniques is HRV breathing techniques. This is a form of biofeedback that we offer, and we target certain breathing techniques for an individual, so we find their ideal breath rate, and this helps them learn how to activate their vagal nerve. Your vagal nerve, the longest nerve in your body, is responsible for our fight or flight response. Learning how and when to activate your vagal nerve is very important in calming down and controlling upcoming symptoms of anxiety. Something else that can help is facing your fears. So that is getting out there and doing what you're afraid of. This is also known as exposure therapy. Another thing is grounding. Grounding techniques can be seen as picking up or touching items near you, savoring any food or drink near you, counting backwards from 100, or describing stuff that's around you. This helps with overwhelming thoughts. Also, another way is reducing negative thinking with cognitive behavioral therapy. Alrighty, that's all I have for today. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Dr. Ron.
Great work, Bridget. Glad to see you get through this. I didn't mean for you to tell that story about me, and it wasn't just to get to talk to women, but I was very inept at all my social skills coming right out of high school. Let me tell you, you don't develop very many social skills in a huddle with a bunch of guys around there trying to hurt each other. So, but this is an opportunity, I think, for us to really, I had to go towards what, hang on, we got a fire trucks out there in my other career. But we, you know, it's so important that I know parents want to do their best to protect their children. I know they want to not put them in uncomfortable situations. But I guarantee, unless you're willing to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable, not much growth occurs in your life. You've got to have challenges. You got to get out there and force yourself into, and that's probably underlying the reason I wanted you to do this presentation, Bridget, was I knew it was going to make you uncomfortable, but you did a great job. And I think that this is what we want to always do. We want to stretch everybody. We want to convince them that they can, just like the first time you ever jump into a pool and you try to swim those first few laps or first few steps, first few strokes. It's so challenging, and by the end of the week, you're just having the best time of your life. So social skills helps you become that independent, fully functioning, tax-paying citizen eventually. That's what our goal is, you know, and we want to be able to pass that on to everybody. So with that said, I'd love to open it up to any questions we have out there about what we can do to help our kids or help anybody that are having issues with social skills.
I was just going to point out a couple of things that I just thought of while Bridget was talking is when we're helping these parents, I know I have a lot of parents who bring their kids into my clinic, and right now social skills is just such a big issue because, as we all know, with the pandemic and everything, and it's a hard conversation to have with a parent. Usually the apple doesn't fall far, right? And the kids are picking up on their parents' anxiety as well. And so there's sort of like this learned response to have anxiety or social anxiety. And so talking with the parents too about, hey, you know, be careful what you say in front of your child. And, you know, you yourself need to go into those social situations and show your child how you're doing that too, because they're going to do what their parent does. And the other thing I was going to say is it's a difficult thing to teach empathy to a child. And I think I just open up this conversation. Some parents won't show, for example, that their feelings are hurt. And I think children need to see that too, that their parents have feelings and their feelings can be hurt too. Because some parents are very, oh, I'm all right, and then their children won't learn that empathy. Or if their child says something that's ugly, hey, that really hurts my feelings. So those are the kinds of conversations as practitioners, I think we need to be having, with the parents, so that the parents can be teaching their children these things at home.
Excellent.
And by the way, I loved all the animal pictures.
Yeah, you know where those came from. No, I think that's a really valid point. Is 80%, Albert Bandera, the social scientist, had said that 80% of behaviors learned. So what they see their parents do, how their parents manage stress, how their parents manage anxiety-provoking situations, how the parents rejoice when they accomplish something that they hadn't tried before. All of this is great ways to set up a dynamic in the home that allows you to teach your children passively. And I think that's the best way to look at it. You want this passive role modeling to occur because then they say, oh, well, mom did her and she was very afraid of it. Look at her, I don't go say all mothers should go jump out of airplanes, but let's do something more reasonable. But Eric, what would you say? I mean, you're new to this country, not 40 years.
I was very impressed by the presentation, the concepts. The question I would say is it possible, when we just, especially in therapy, we tend to work only with the child, more or less. That's what I hear a little bit. And I wonder if one should ask, there are two questions I ask. One is, it's a question I learned in therapy, in a sense of family therapy. And that's, how is the child sacrificing him or herself for her parents? It's a funny way of thinking. Sometimes by being difficult, it means the parents have to worry about that. And then they don't have to deal with their own conflicts. That's the second part is looking at as an educational program. And I wonder if the clinic could run groups, either not with their children, but with maybe 3 or 4 parents groups to teach some skills without labeling the parent being bad. Because the hard part is the moment you say to tell parents, you're supposed to do something different, they interpret that as failure for themselves or blaming.
More like creating a social skills training group for parents, so they could be the trainers of social skills in their own household.
Correct. So it's almost like teaching the parents how to teach the child.
I think you could probably get a lot further with that, because I've tried doing these middle school social skills groups, and you talk about wanting to pull your hair out. That no matter what you do, they're going to have to make something totally ridiculous out of it, So, but you're right. Maybe if we could set up a dynamic where the parents are getting some good, hardcore, simple methods to without directly teaching, indirectly teaching their child, how to interact better with their peers. And I think it's really important to let the parents be okay with their children being uncomfortable. Their children are challenged. We've got to stop socially retarding our children. And that's what's going on in this. If we protect them from everything, why do they have to come up and go to cry rooms in colleges? Because they haven't learned how to deal with issues. Well, let's help them in that. How do we deal with trouble? How do we deal with trauma? How do we deal with friends that are making fun of us and everything else? And parents run into the same thing.
Well, it's almost like more normalized. It is like normalizing sort of behavior in a way to say, instead of being slightly, if you're sad, well, you're sad, that's normal. It doesn't mean you're totally depressed right away. If you hurt, well, that's normal, go over it. I mean, it's a funny way, that kind of non-attachment, but I think it is really critical. And when I look at my college students, I see such a giant difference often between my foreign-born students I mean, especially those from Iran and other places, and some of my US students, because some of my foreign-born students, when they were little kids, even the girls as little, they could just leave home the whole day basically, and nobody worried that they wouldn't be safe. And it was this social acceptance. And now in the United States, you are continually helicoptered almost in some ways. That's one whole group of parents, especially. And I think that's you learn no initiative how to solve problems. You need to get lost.
Mhm.
And maybe that's the advantage of outward bound experiences or something like this. So I do think there is some good evidence for little kids that, there's this great book, which I like, The Last Child Out of the Woods or something, where if you take kids and have them sort of explore nature and they have to struggle with that, they end up doing better.
Well, I think that's a concept called meandering. And meandering is something when I was growing up, we did all the time. I mean, we had woods behind our house, and Saturday morning I'd be gone until dinner time. And yes, I got lost. Yes, I got myself in trouble, but guess what? I found my way home every night, something about hunger. But
That's the same for me. My parents were very strict. I had to do dishes. I had specific rules.
Mhm.
And then I had to be home at a certain time. And if I wasn't home at that time, my God, the world would fall on me. I would never want to miss that. But in between that, they never asked me even where I went.
Well, now that's so dangerous though, because where can we allow our children to meander that would be safe? So that's another issue we have.
Yeah, no, but I think I agree with that, but except it isn't true. If you look at child abductions, for example, there's no change in statistics since the 1950s.
Oh, cool.
Basically, yes, there are always kids who were murdered, always kids who were abducted. But if you actually look at the abductions of children or their sexual abuse, by real strangers, quote, which is really rare, there was no difference in statistics.
Right. We didn't have the media coverage that we have now. So now it's just more apparent. And it's seemingly more worse, but it's not.
That's
so
right.
What
And
I always use is, I use the term with my parents when they're teaching their children. I use the word resilience. How can we teach your child to be more resilient in the world?
That's a big word.
Yeah, I think resiliency is the word, and that's what we're teaching our children from day one. And unfortunately, this pandemic has taken I'm generally speaking, taken our children in the opposite direction. One thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, and I was hoping maybe Bridgette could help with, because I know you must know this, Bridgette, is what is happening to these children's brainwave patterns who are not interacting socially, face to face. Now, there's plenty of children interacting gaming, and they think that they have friends when they game, all right? Like people from all over. Those are my friends. But they're not interacting face to face. Well, what do you think is going on with their brainwave patterns? How is this changing them?
I'm sure that Dr. Ron can add more, but I do know that a lot of individuals that have come in that we would even venture to say are addicted to gaming have more of an ADHD-like representation in their acute EEG report and have more ADHD-like symptoms. They also tend to have a misaligned circadian rhythm. So, they kind of go hand in hand. But I would say socially, they might be getting the communication, cooperation skills, maybe even team building through those exercises that they're doing, but it's not face to face, so they're not getting to see body language or read facial, the faces that we make all the time that tell people our emotions, and they can't read that. So it's strictly just, what you're hearing, which is, great for a phone call, But a lot of times we're with people face to face, and that's not going to help as much as knowing all the other cues that can help us interact with others socially.
Totally agree. I think that, if you're used to high impact visual stimulation, the brain puts in filters, is the way I try to explain it. And the filters are so we're not overstimulated. I use the example, you take a New York City boy and you exchange him with the Idaho potato farm boy. The Idaho potato farm boy would be overwhelmed with anxiety in New York City, where the New York City boy would be bored to death in Idaho potato farm. So we really do need to develop those abilities to observe. And without Big Bird dancing around, or without all these fighting characters coming at you and these over exemplified facial expressions that you get in the cyber world, we really do need those to be able to pick up on the subtle signs of communication, especially for the boys, because the boys are just, girls can pick up on it a little bit easier, but boys have a real difficult time with the social cues. And that's one of the areas that we find is really in deficit. And back to this one thing we were talking about earlier, now children, when they run up against a problem, this was demonstrated to me, and I don't know if I've told this to you guys before. I used to run quite a bit. I ran 1,000 miles a year for 10 years, just for the heck of it. And 4 out of hip, but my heart's great. But I was at the park one day watching this mother and this little infant walking. Kind of a neat little thing, and she's got his little hand, and there's this rise in the concrete there between the splits in the concrete, and the little boy trips and goes down. And the mother, immediately, the boy looks up at his mom. And as he's looking up at his mom, she goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he just goes, "Wah!" I'm going, yeah, that's what I expected. So the next week, happened to be in the same park, happened to have another mother walking by, different mother, different infant, or toddler, and I should say. And I'm going, oh, come on, what are the chances that the kid trips over that same spot? Sure enough, that little child went down and hit the ground, looked up at his mother, and mother said, "Oh, come on, get up. That didn't hurt," And he just gets up, little blood dribbling off his knees, and just walks on off. It's what's expected, Challenge in life is part of life. And I think we got to teach this to our children, that when they run up against an obstacle, when they run up against a problem, when they have a solution, don't step in there and solve it for them. If they want to come up with a solution that is wrong, that's okay. That's a learning experience. They will learn it very easily. Don't stick that penny in that socket. You only do that once. And I'm sorry if my brothers and I, my 3 younger brothers and I, didn't die from our childhood. Children are pretty resilient because we did everything we probably shouldn't have done, but we learned, and we learned how to come up against a problem and come up with a solution. Now, parents, once a child gets to be about 13, 14 years old, you stop being their supervisor or their manager, and you become their advisor, and you got to make that shift. Yes, you could stay out all night, the 16-year-old boy, but you're likely to get arrested. The truant officers are likely to come after you. You don't make it home the next day. You're probably going to lose several of your privileges for it, but we can't really stop and if they usually will make a better decision based upon the choices that they have. And so that's how we become an advisor and say, well, when I tried that when I was young, this is what happened to me. But you need to learn how to solve problems. If you've got a better solution, it may be a better solution. The way I do it is not always the best way. It's not the only way. So that's what I try to get out there, is teach them how to be problem solvers. And I had a boy getting ready to graduate from Sam Houston who had never even registered for a single class, had never set up a single appointment with a professor to talk to him. Mom had to go in and intercede and do it for every time. And so what does he do? He goes into a full-blown panic when he realizes school is over and he's going to graduate. Now what? Interviewing for a job? Oh my God, I had to talk to somebody and make his own interview. It was just overwhelming. So that's what part of this whole social skills is. It's basically just teaching them how to become fully independent. And if you rescue them all the time, if you come up with all the solutions, you're basically saying that they're not smart enough to come up with it themselves. And so I think that's where parents need to steer differently. And this is kind of one of own contention I've always had is we've really got to start letting our children
Make mistakes.
mistakes. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make a mistake. Just learn from it.
Oh, Ron, you just reminded me for little babies, there's some very good evidence that if you have a baby, a little child, you give them a toy and you show them how to operate it, then they never explore anything else. But if you give them the toy and they have to figure it out, they figure out many more things that toy may be able to do. And so there's some very good, early childhood development like that. And the other part, I believe that was a Dutch study in looking at brainwave activity, that when they compared the brains of college or high school or college students from 20 years ago, that on the average, the college students or high school students have more ADHD-like brains for the equivalent group, even though they're not diagnosed that way. And that may be the effect about how media has stopped, how our interaction with media has stopped as initiating our own attention to go outward and focus versus always being captured by the stimuli.
True. And creativity has been trashed because when I was growing up, we never even uttered the word bored. Bored was not in our vocabulary. I mean, we had a broomstick and a walnut. We had a baseball game. We could create our own games. These kids now, they can't. There's no creativity. There's no, like you said with the little child, come up with a way you're going to play with this, see what it's all about. Let them explore, let them figure this stuff out, because that's what we want to have in our children is that creativity that says, we couldn't afford to have anything fixed. Have anything replaced. So we had to fix everything. We learned to fix stuff. And duct tape and banding wire and you name it. We could make things last a lot longer just because we learned. And I think this is another thing, how to teach children how to fix something that's broke. Don't just go out there and buy them a new one. That comes at a cost. And the cost is they're not going to learn how to fix anything in their life. And life is all about fixing the next problem that occurs in one way or another. So, Lorianne, you're kind of quiet back there.
I guess and add, I know we're talking primarily about children, so maybe my comment isn't completely relatable to that age, but when I see a lot of adult women and they're kind of talking about their anxiety and just in general, not just socially, I'm a big advocate, even for myself personally, to encourage, obviously when it's safe and things like this, but to travel. I find that exposes people to new things. And at some point, obviously if you're traveling by yourself, which is what every year minus COVID, personally, I travel for 10 days on my own, and it never fails that there's a problem. There's something that needs to be changed in the trip. I get lost, whatever. And, obviously I have a plan and things like that, but I think that challenges me. And again, when I'm not just women, but I'm just kind of honing in on that example of that when you're in a new place that forces you to talk to people. And there's a lot of anxiety, but also when you tell them, are you new or you haven't been there, people tend to, be kind, I think. And so I don't know, that I'm a big advocate of encouraging people, obviously within safety and things like this, but to do a little traveling, even if it's just to a new city, an hour drive or something, to expose yourself to that, to not only socialize, but create some independence in your own problem solving. So anyway.
I think that's great. That's perfect because it's exposing yourself to something different, and it does rewire the brain. It makes connections that you didn't have. So, great point. Anybody else have something? Pam?
I was just going to say that I know when I was a kid, I was Scouts, and so for several summers we'd go away for these 2-week camps up in the country. And I think an awful lot of how I function really came from there. My parents didn't like to camp. There are a lot of things I probably wouldn't have been exposed to, but I think the most interesting was one year, I'm always a year younger than everybody in my class because I started early. So I'm certainly not smart. I'm just young. So I got there and I was supposed to be with two other friends. And because of the age difference, I ended up in another tribe or what they called us. And so I was amongst total strangers. And, you know, it really, I think you just have to sink or swim. And so like you said, I had to learn to talk to people and how to get along. And it really, I think, prepared me for a life of having to go out there and meet new people and find, like Bridgette said, you know, asking questions, getting to know, and you figure out early on too, there's people you really like that'll like you back. There's some, yeah, you know, and so I really think summer camp can be a tremendous asset just because you're sort of dumped in there and you got to figure it out. Oh.
Well, I think it's we're all on the right track here. We've got to get the word out more so. We'll have this, maybe we can put this one out to more parents than just registered, because we've got that list. I just think it's so valuable. And we've got to carry it on. Our kids are suffering. They can't handle life. They're hobbled. And I think it's our responsibility as therapists out there and people, caregivers for them. We need to be able to make this big push to try to make these connections. And I agree, it's mostly parents' minds that we're looking at. We've got to really get to the parents and say, you're doing your child no favor by making their life perfect. You know, when your child, I tell the kids, when I ask a young 16, 17-year-old, are you happy living at home? No, I want to move out as soon as I can. I look over at the parent, you guys have done a great job, because that's what you want. You want them to want to move out. You don't want them to stay there and becoming a house pet the rest of your life, you know. And the boys look at me, and the parents look at me, and it's like, well, I guess I did, didn't I? I said, yeah. And then that means that they've got to come up with a solution. How am I going to support myself? So it's all from that point. And so that's where you got to start. You don't want to make life at home so comfortable they never want to leave you, because then that's not, what do the birds do? They kick those little birds out of the nest when it's ready for them to fly, or even if they don't want to fly, they're going to have to fly or die, you know? So Animal Kingdom's got it right. You know, we just have to be more imitative. And that's why I've loved her animal pictures on her PowerPoint. I said, yeah, that's really true. We've really got to look at the Animal Kingdom, and they will tell you how you're supposed to rear these children. Mama Lion's got those little babies out there hunting with them from the very first time. And she puts it in between them. She makes them fight for a dinner. And it's, you know, I think that's, we've got to understand that we are part of the animal kingdom ourselves. And we got to stop over coddling our children to a point that when they'll never be ready to become adults. And that's our job, not to make them happy. Our job is to make them fully independent as soon as possible. So anything else that we have here? Anybody else want to chime in before we leave? Got a few minutes here.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Today I met with a PhD student, is not a child, and she lives in an urban setting. She lives in New York City, and her challenge is basically getting her ideas down on paper so she can finish her dissertation. And specifically, what we focused on today was needing to leave her apartment to write somewhere else, to go to the coffee shop to write, to go to another location, not inside the four walls of her apartment. And her very real obstacle was safety. She was concerned for the safety of her laptop, because her whole life is in her laptop, and this concern is a legitimate one. And so the very thing that is amazing, 21st century blessing of having technology mobile. What we wound up talking about was a memory that I had of when I was going to college. The computer occupied the entire basement of the physics building. And because of the progression of technology, now we can pick up computing power and carry it with me under my arm in my bag. And so the value of that mobility has tethered her in her apartment. And so we explored the idea of being held hostage, the idea of keeping things under lock and key, the idea of being a diamond on display at a museum. How is she going to view her technology? So it was a very insightful session. And she found some solutions because it was real.
And was this your patient or your daughter?
I'm a coach,
You're a
so
coach.
she's my client. She's my
Okay.
client.
Okay, cool. My first thought when you said that is, and it better go for every darn thing, and every person that's ever worked on a dissertation, you better have it backed up every 10 minutes and have it on a flash drive.
Right. But
You
that
know?
wasn't the issue. The issue was not saving the document. She has that skill. The issue was physically losing her, getting robbed, or spilling coffee, or it just physical safety, because she realized her entire livelihood was in her laptop.
Mhm.
And this was a valid concern. So we weren't addressing the technology, she's adept. She has the technology skills. It was interacting with the environment so that she could be productive and actually get her idea done on paper.
I agree. And I think
She needed to submit something to her advisor in 7 days. And so that was what we were discussing. How do I produce a document to submit to my advisor if I need to go write at the coffee shop to maintain productivity and creativity, if I'm afraid to take my laptop out of my apartment because of safety issues.
well, that goes back to a lot of people. They have all their eggs in one basket.
Correct.
And if something crumbles, you lose everything. Well,
You lose
I
everything.
think that's where that's where I love to teach plan A, B, C, and D. If plan A goes down, where's plan B? What are you going to do to back it up? What if your apartment catches on fire and you can't grab your laptop? Is your life over? No, you got to have a backup plan. Well, I've backed it up to the cloud, whatever that is. But
Exactly.
it's got to be that kind of, you can't put, and that goes for relationships as well. If I don't have this other person in my life, I can't go on. Well, that's just ridiculous. That's where the good hardcore therapy comes in, that you have to be this individual that is not totally dependent upon one thing for your happiness. And if that goes away, you're completely destroyed. That's too tightly focused. And, because things happen, you could have a fire just easily in one of those apartments in New York City, as they proved last 2 or 3 months ago, and wipe out everything. And then, well, what was your backup? Do you have it backed up? Do you have another laptop? Can you recreate it? And, we all learned this the hard way by not backing it up. I know, Eric, you've done it too, had to rewrite something and you didn't save it fast enough. Now I got this auto save, but I don't even know how to use it. But I am religious about that. So it's one of these things, we got to teach them solutions and not just one plan. What's your plan B? And that's what life is all about, because plan A, how much of the time the original Apollo capsule was on track to the moon when they were flying to the moon the first time? How much percentage of the time it was dead on track? 4%. The rest was just constant correction. And that's what life is. You got a direction, but you're going to have a lot of corrections along that direction. And you better be prepared for it. And what happens if something goes wrong? Plan B, get to kick it in right away, so, and it goes for everything. The more options you have, the less anxiety you have. So that's what I like to teach folks. Well, guys, we're about out of time. I appreciate everybody's attendance.
Ron, let me add 2 things. One,
Okay.
I'm really appreciative of you of sort of doing this program. I put 2 citations in the chat, and
Okay.
it just reminded me because how we think of children. Because we live in this kind of funny world where we can't really think back of how it was in other times and what kids are able to do. And there's an old book by Lacey, 2014, The Anthropology of Childhood Cherubs and Chattel and Channelings. And it looks at children depending of all different cultures. And it reminded me that if you go into some form of hunting and gathering societies, that little 3-year-olds are given a knife to be able to to carve out already some animals for food. And all of a sudden here, we don't give little kids a knife. My God, they could harm themselves, or the other parts. And it really is an interesting piece. And the other one, which I love, is an old book by Joseph Pierce called Evolution's End. And that the last part really, it doesn't deal with our modern, social media, but it does deal with the television and other things. But it really gives a different perspective how maybe our culture has really changed our brains and our ways of being in the world.
It has. Well, this spurs a lot of other thought for other topics, but and if anybody ever has any ideas, please email me. I've put my email onto the chat as well as our website. And I love any feedback from anybody out there. Thank you so much, Ruth, for donating your time and energy to all your clients out there. We need people like you. All right. And with that,
Thanks so
I guess
much.
I'll say good night to everybody, or good afternoon, and we'll carry on with our day.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for doing it.
Bye, Lorianne. Bye, Pam. Bye,
Thank you.
Christy. Okay. All right. I guess he didn't want to hang on there. What do you think?
The iPhone set.